Do we have Mr. Simpson available? Thank you.
Okay.
All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Bailey. People represented by Ms. Clark and Mr. Darden. The jury is not present. Counsel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We need to look at the videotape that I take it these are now excerpts from the videotape that we viewed yesterday.
In line with Your Honor's instructions, we have now tried to comply. I think you're right, Your Honor, a copy at 9 o'clock. There's one additional tape, which is very short, which we're playing that tape. I'd ask them to take it playing the outset.
All right. Ms. Clark, let me ask you this. Do we have an objection from the people as to, have you seen the excerpts, first of all? All right. Do you lodge any objections to any of the excerpts? Which ones?
Actually, I think I'm going to need to play it and show the court which excerpts.
Okay.
That might be the most effective thing.
Let's take it from the top.
Okay. Stop right here? Oops. Can you stop? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Part of the problem is shown just before this frame and in this one as well. And the problem is with this tape, with the excerpts that I'm going to be pointing out to the court, is the lack of depth, the lack of perspective. Under 352, this tape is clearly more misleading and more prejudicial than probative. The problem that we have is that we have a cameraman whose angle and position is unknown, and we have the use of a lens, the nature of which is unknown. The problem created by this is that there's no depth perception, and it's more misleading than it is informative because it winds up making everyone look on top of each other. What you can't see is where their feet are positioned. You can't see the ground that their feet are positioned on, and that is the whole point for which the defense is attempting to introduce this, is to show that people were walking through blood and contaminating evidence. The tape fails to show that, and even worse than that, is misleading in that it tends to leave the inference that the feet are in blood or contaminating blood as they move when you really can't even see them. So the tape does not, in fact, inform you of where the feet are because you never can see them. It makes it appear that they are stepping in areas that they're not because of the lack of depth perception. And the court has been there, so the court is aware of the way the area really looks. And you can see how flattened this picture really is. It doesn't depict the distances.
Hasn't the jury also been there?
They have, but you can't count on the jury to remember everything in such great detail. I will tell you that, Your Honor, I've been out to that scene 4 or 5 times. And in between, I have every time forgotten what the distances were really like. Every time I go back there, I'm surprised at how small that area is in front where the fences meet to the north and to the east, and surprised at the length of the walkway, the number of stairs going up and down. You can't remember this accurately. No one can. So the fact that the jury went is helpful, but certainly does not resolve this particular problem. Moreover, to the extent that their memories fade, their accurate memories will be replaced with this misleading video that it has no probative value because it doesn't show the very thing the defense purports to use it for, which is where they're stepping. And as we advance the tape, the court will see how bad this problem gets.
Do we get to hear her narrative, or can I respond at some point?
Well, let's watch the first excerpt, and then I'll hear.
This is called argument, I think, and it's at least. At least see where the detective is standing.
Detective Phillips.
Right. Now here again. Can we stop that? Same problem. We can't see where Claudine Ratcliffe, who is the woman to the left of Tom Lang, is standing. You can't see whether she's standing in a clear area or in an area that the defense, as the defense wants to allege, is bloody. Same thing with Detective Lang. You can't tell by this video where he's actually standing. The inference the defense will ask the jury to draw is that he's standing in blood. I'm sure that's totally untrue. Nevertheless, the impression created, which is a totally misleading one, is that they are, or might be. The fact of the matter is, this tape does nothing to clear up that issue. In fact, it does the reverse. It clouds the issue to make it appear one way when it is in fact another. By this tape, it would appear that these people are standing in blood if the defense inference and spin is to be bought by this jury, when in fact that is not the case. So what you have here is a piece of evidence that not only does not inform the jury of the truth, but actually hides and distorts the truth.
All right, how about the next portion of the...
And the timestamp is right over their feet, obscuring the very point that the defense is trying to make.
Well, let me hear what Ms. Clark's objections are to the first clip, and then I'll hear your response, Mr. Cochran. Mr. Harris?
And the court can see, again, the timestamp continued to obscure their feet as they stood there. And now we have a person who completely blocks the view.
Executive Phillips.
Again, you can't see where Claudine Ratcliffe is standing, whether her feet are on plastic or whether they're on the ground itself, whether they're in blood or in a clear spot. Everything up to here is largely irrelevant. Again, you have Claudine Ratcliffe shown there in the background, as the court could see. No, there's no way to tell where she's standing or where she's walking. Once again, you can see that Detective Lang is taking some care in the way he steps, but what you can see is where he is stepping. His feet are obscured. The area he's stepping in is totally obscured. Same thing here, same problem. You can't see where these people are standing. You can't see the area of the case. You can't see their feet. You can't see the ground they're standing on. As the court can see, at every point so far, when the defense would ask the jury to make an inference, the very point that they're trying to make is obscured.
Mr. Harris?
It continues on just a little bit further.
This epitomizes the problem with this whole tape. It looks from this that everyone is standing on top of each other with not 2 inches between them. We know that is not the case. That obviously can't physically be the case, but it's such a misleading and distorted clip that you can't tell where everyone is standing. You can't appreciate the spatial distances, and you certainly can't see from any of this where their feet are. Same problem here. Again here.
Ms. Clark?
I think that what this clip shows the court is the very reason for the existence of Section 352 of the Evidence Code. This is a piece of evidence that is not evidence. This is a distortion. This is a method of confusion, and it does not inform the jury of anything of probative value. In fact, quite the contrary, it obscures the facts that it purports to that the defense says it purports to show, and that is where people stood and whether the crime scene was properly handled. It doesn't inform the jury of any of that. It's very distorting. It's very misleading. They have not produced the cameramen who could come forward to tell us. Oh, there's more.
There's more.
No, we're just looking at the first clip at this point, taking one at a time. Mr. Harris, thank you.
It's still part of the first clip.
It is?
I didn't watch the part of the tape. I thought the tape was over.
Me too.
Well, there's a lot of blank space in the
Well, see, no one told us that.
And we can't tell them how to watch.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna sit up and watch it.
Wait.
Now we're blank.
Wait, means stop. This looks like the same thing over again.
I rewind.
All right, let's take up the first segment that you're offering first. All right, Ms. Clark, do you have any other objections?
Furthermore, and lastly, that they have not produced the cameraman who could tell us where he stood. I'm sure it will be something in the nature of across the street. And someone who will tell us the nature of the lens he used. I'm sure there's some sort of telephoto lens. And I'm sure that if an expert were called, because we have received calls from experts after this tape was shown yesterday, they will inform the court of just how distorting and misleading this really is. It won't be hearsay when they come in to testify. But I really don't think that it's appropriate for the court to allow the jury to be misled this way. And that is the purpose for Section 352. The probative value is nil, and we'd ask the court to keep it out for that reason.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cochran?
Sure. I would like very much to get to the cross-examination, and I will not belabor this point. I think it's a sad day when we have a videotape of the scene, Your Honor, that where there's a proper foundation. Cases say we don't have to bring in the cameraman. No one is trying to mislead anyone, Your Honor. This is a videotape. And Ms. Clark protests too much, Your Honor. They obviously don't want the jury to see this. As you pointed out, we've all been out to the scene. There are certainly spatial differences, but one can see that yellow tape very clearly. I went through yesterday with Detective Lang with regard to what was shown there at various times. Ms. Clark's problem throughout the whole presentation of her case is she's worried about what we're going to do and what we're going to say. This tape is a tape taken that morning, Your Honor, on 3 particular periods of time. It's taken when Detective Lang greets Miss Radcliffe and advises her what's happening. The bodies are still there. It's taken when the body of Nicole Brown Simpson is moved. It's taken when the body of Mr. Ron Goldman is moved. It shows us also, if the court pleases, when Mr. Jacopo arrives at the scene. We also see Mr. Fung, the criminalist, there. That is far more compelling evidence than the hours she spent with detailed little questions, and we were showing exactly what happened. When and where does it say that a videotape, an accurate depiction of what happens, would not be admissible in a 352? It's preposterous, and it's sad, Your Honor. It's really sad. Further, Your Honor, we've done everything that you've asked us to do with regard to this. We started talking about this tape in opening statement. We presented them a copy of this tape on January 23rd. They will do anything they can to avoid having the jury see an actual tape of how things looked that day. Judge, with regard to any spatial differences, we have a detective of some 28 years' experience, a very, very competent detective who will be able to tell where people were standing and that sort of thing. They don't want the tape shown because they don't have the tape, we have the tape. And we're the ones trying to help this jury see what really transpired. Who could complain about a tape of what actually happened? We didn't make this up. This is what happened contemporaneously with the events. It is the best recollection of what took place. And as to the spatial differences, we have witnesses, we have the yellow tape, we've all been out there. We know it's a small area. And so I think, Your Honor, they've objected on this for months now, at least 1 month. Now, isn't it time to proceed with this, Your Honor? We've lost one whole morning. We'd like to proceed with our cross-examination and to get this done. This is admissible, it's appropriate, it's relevant, it's a videotape of what took place, Your Honor.
What's its relevance?
Its relevance is to show exactly what happened with regard to, for instance, the officer testifies that he doesn't remember whether he's wearing gloves or not. It shows us who's wearing gloves at the scene, who's wearing anything over their shoes. It shows us what the coroner's people are doing at various times. It shows us this particular scene. And Judge, this scene and what took place, this scene becomes very relevant in this case. Because if the evidence was not appropriately and properly collected, if there was contamination of this scene, we have an absolute right to show this. This is a videotape. This would be almost like, and I'm sure that in the Rodney King case, I'm sure the prosecution argued you can't show that tape. The defense argued we couldn't show that tape. But this is an accurate recollection of what took place. So why in the world would it not be shown? It has relevant testimony about the arrival of people, what they did, how these bodies were placed, where things were, with Fung coming in there with his collection of things. There's great relevance, and it also goes to impeachment. For all those reasons, this is it's relevant. It's not prejudicial. We took out the prejudicial parts. In fact, I mentioned to your court yesterday I would do that yesterday. So we've been talking about this for more than a month, and their objections about spatial differences are obviously cured. We've all been out there, Your Honor, and we have Detective Lang.
Well, don't you agree that there's at least one shot there where everybody's lined up on the sidewalk when I believe one of the bodies is about to be moved, and everybody's sort of lined up, and you can't really tell who's standing where because of the lens distortion?
No, I don't agree with that at all, Your Honor. We know where these people are. There is a yellow tape. There's some people beyond the tape, some people within the tape, and we can cover that with the examination of the officer who was there. That has nothing to do with admissibility. That has, Your Honor, with all due respect, it has to do with the weight of it. And I think we will we will carefully cover that with Detective Lang. It's not offered.
You agree the court still has 352 jurisdiction over
Oh, the
this?
court has certainly 352 jurisdiction, but the court also wants this is a search for truth. And I cannot see, if this is a search for truth by both sides, how anybody could object to a videotape of what actually took place there. I mean, they were talking all the time about the truth and what went on, and that's folly. We want to show this. We have the officer there, Your Honor, who can make this clear. And the prosecution never gives the jury any credit. Marcia Clark says that each time she goes out there, she forgets how small it is. But I think these jurors will not forget how small it is. I think Lang is here to remind us, Your Honor, and this is relevant testimony. It's very relevant. It also has some impeaching aspects, and where there's any effort or any possible confusion, that'll be cleared up by Detective Lang.
All right. Let me see excerpt number 2.
Is that, you're going to Detective Lang be outside of that? Oh,
I don't think we've finished all of the ones on this tape.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry.
Fast forward line.
Segment 3.
Your Honor, this is the same problem we have throughout the tape. You know, the defense is basically stating that they have the absolute right to distort, confuse, and mislead this jury. You can see from this tape, the problem is that the people would have absolutely no objection to an accurate videotape. From the previous shot you saw that introduced this segment, you can tell it's being shot from across the street at some distance from the location, which is why they had to use a zoom lens. And that's why we have everything so compressed as it's shown here. These people look like they're within 1 inch of each other. You can't tell where they're standing, you can't see their feet, and you haven't been able to see their feet in any part of this segment yet. This right here shows them like literally in a dog pile on top of each other. We know that can't be true. But you can't see where they're standing, you can't see where their feet are, you can't see the ground they're standing on, you can't see the spatial relationship between them. If there was any accuracy to this videotape, the people would not object to it. The very reason the defense wants it is because it is so misleading, it is so inaccurate, it is such a distortion of the truth. If the defense really wanted the truth, then it would be calling these people to the witness stand to say where they stood and what they were doing and whether they were wearing booties or whether they were wearing gloves. You don't have to put on this pile of distortion and basically lies to get the jury to believe in something that never occurred. And that's what's so unfair here, is that this is the nature of this videotape is going to mislead them to the point where they will not be able to remember they are not going to be able to remember the crime scene from their own memory nearly as well as a very recent depiction on videotape. I would also remind the court that there is a video that will be shown concerning what the defense still frame picture. Never mind. The vice and the problem with following the defense lead on these things is that they are deliberately hiding the truth from this jury. And they did that with the American Journal. They did that with the American Journal photograph. Then I don't know if the jury knows to this date that the photograph they showed was a still frame from a video. They would never have known that, in fact, it was shot by some news tabloid agency had I not brought that out. Had the people not marked an exhibit that was the duplicate of that showed what that logo was that the defense blocked out. And we're going to have more to show the court about that later. But in showing that to the jury, they deliberately created the inference that before any testing or collection was done, officers were traipsing up and down the walkway. We're going to prove that's not true. We're going to prove that's a lie. And the problem with this tape is the very same thing. They have an impression created by a distortion with lens and with position. They inform the jury of nothing probative. I understand the difference between admissibility and weight, but in that term, this is weightless. This is really non-probative. The only value in it is to distort, mislead, and confuse the jury, and that's the value the defense seeks to get from it. But truth, there's nothing resembling the truth that this jury will get from this videotape.
Ms. Clark, do you have access? Because apparently one can tell just by some of the distance shots that there are a number of video photographers at the location. And inadvertently, I have myself seen on television many versions of this same activity taken from different shots. Do you have access to any of those?
I haven't. We haven't been able to. We, as a matter of fact, tried to get a hold of the cameraman who produced this tape, and they have resisted our subpoena.
Channel 5?
I'm not sure the name. We're gonna check. I'm informed by Mr. Darden that we're talking to their lawyers in Chicago. But in the meantime, what we have here.
They're responding.
Well, let me just ask you. You don't have any other videotapes from any other sources of this particular activity?
No.
Okay. Mr. Cochran?
Yeah, prosecution could go back and try to get OJ Simpson's medical records in 1970 in Buffalo, and they can't. Everybody in America has seen these videotapes, Your Honor, and I think that the court's going to see who's being disingenuous in this instance. This is a videotape. We didn't create it. This was shot by local people. She's talking about distortion and lies. This was shot by local TV people, and we're just trying to show
Am I correct? This Channel 5?
I think it's Channel 5, I believe it, Your Honor. You know, and the problem is, this is available to all of us. You told us to go out and try to subpoena whatever we could. We were all trying to do that. Your Honor, with regard to any particular photograph she wants to stop at, it is common sense that when you shoot a video, it's going to show people at different locations. Detective Lang can explain that. The jury understands that. Nobody's trying to mislead anybody. What we're trying to show is what took place at the scene. Make no mistake about it. What we're talking about is their fear of anybody seeing what took place out there. That's all this is about. Have you ever seen them protest and argue for 1 month over something that is admissible? This is clearly admissible. They have Detective Lang. They have every officer out there to make this clear. We will make it clear. Nobody's trying to mislead anybody. About the American Journal thing, what the court allowed us to do on the American Journal was to ask whether or not anybody had seen that officer. We took American Journal out of the photo. It was a print. There was never any attempt to mislead anybody about that. What happened at that...
Mr. Cochran, that's apples and oranges.
All right, well, she brought the apples and oranges up, Your Honor. You didn't say that when... Well, I won't bring up what you didn't say when she was here. But that is apples and oranges, but she brought up the apples and oranges. So since we're talking about fruit, let me get back to the right fruit. This is appropriate fruit for this jury, Your Honor, and we will handle it in an appropriate way. And the court knows we have witnesses here. Nobody's trying to distort or mislead. This is a videotape, Judge, of what happened there. You yourself have seen videotapes. They're available to everybody. Everybody tries their case the way they want to. If they want to hide what took place out there and try to create a sterile view of one man's opinion by calling somebody to the stand, so be it. If we want to show what actually took place, so the jury sees Jacopo, so the jury sees Miss Ratcliffe, so the jury sees Phillips is where he was and what he had to do, I think that's absolutely our right, and this defendant should not be punished by this. And it's unfair and it's outrageous, and we want to proceed with this at this point, Your Honor. We've laid the appropriate foundation. We've cited the cases. We want to move on and get this thing done and move on with our cross-examination. We've lost this morning. We're now losing much of the afternoon. We'd like to resolve this.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, excuse me, Counsel. Detective Lang, now that you've seen that videotape, can you ascertain where people are standing from those camera angles?
Not really, Your Honor. I'm pretty sure about where I was in my location, but I can't tell where anyone else was because I can't see the bottom of their legs, their position.
There's another element of this. Is that there has, the defense has failed to lay any foundation at all. I don't know why Mr. Cochran keeps saying that. There's been no foundation laid for this. There's been no one called to authenticate this tape or how it was made. And just because it's good enough for Channel 5 doesn't mean it's good enough for this jury. I think there's a big difference between what you can show on a news TV show, as we've seen, and what you can do in a court of law. You know, there have been, the problem with veracity is not that we're accusing Channel 5 of lying. That's not their fault. They were out there, they were trying to take the most accurate picture they could from a distance. They did the best they could.
Channel 5 would have a Chicago lawyer.
Right. But what I'm concerned about is this, Your Honor. Channel 5 did not shoot that scene for the purpose of introducing the matter in court. They shot a scene as best they could from a limited vantage point so that they could put it on television. That's all. They weren't looking to admit something in a court of law so that they could most accurately depict everything at all. That wasn't their purpose. That wasn't their focus. I'm not casting any aspersions on them. But this is a court of law, and our standards have to be higher, and we have to require more for this jury, and we have to make sure that this jury does get the accurate truth. And all of the truth, not a distortion and not a piece of a truth and not a little corner over here that pleases the defense, but the whole truth. And that's what the people are looking for. If they want to have the jury see Jacopo, the jury see Ratcliffe, they know where to find them. These people can be subpoenaed. They're not hiding somewhere. And Mr. Cochran knows that very well. He doesn't want the jury to get the truth. He doesn't like the fact that we have witnesses taking the witness stand and telling it the way it really was. He doesn't want that to happen. We're doing it with very painstaking care. He doesn't like it. He wants to spin that. He wants to distort that. He wants to make it appear in a way that it never was. And so what a perfect thing. He's got a tape that was taken that happens to distort the scene completely. He's got the perfect vehicle for it. But it is not appropriate in a court of law. He can entertain his friends with it, and he can tell all he wants about how we're hiding the truth. We are the only ones seeking the truth in this courtroom. We are the only side, on counsel table, Your Honor. Counsel table. let me make that real quick. We are trying to make sure the jury gets the accurate evidence, the truth of the matter, and a complete picture. And the defense wants to hand them a distortion and a half-truth. And that's what this is. Yes, it tells you that certain people are at the crime scene. But the one thing that the defense is claiming it wants to admit it for is never shown by this tape. In fact, you never see anyone's feet. So their claimed probative value is non-existent. And all we have left is prejudicial value. That is the value that it has for the defense in misleading this jury. And that's what the people are required to prevent. And that's what we are seeking the court's seeking the court's order to say, no, you cannot confuse, no, you cannot distort, this jury will get the truth, and this tape is not the truth.
All right. Briefly, Mr. Cochran.
In this courtroom, we've heard so many times how the people are the only ones seeking the truth, Your Honor. We welcome their witnesses. I welcome Lang, as you saw yesterday. I welcome all the witnesses they're going to bring. They can't stand the truth. We are the ones introducing the truth here. We're showing a videotape. Now, the fact that somebody can't see somebody's legs, that's preposterous, Your Honor. The part of a videotape, the beauty is you stand there and you look at it, and you can tell where people are standing. You can see that some of the people are standing in the shrubbery. You can see exactly where they are. That's what a videotape is. I'm sure that in every case, you know, it's amazing. I'm sure people all across America are amazed at this argument. Somebody wants to keep a videotape of a scene out. You know, Judge, this all would have been handled appropriately if the LAPD would videotape these crime scenes like other big city departments do. They'd have their own video, but they don't do that. So we have to go and get the next best thing we can. We're not trying to hide. They should change their procedure. We're bringing in what we have under the circumstances, and they have to live with that, Judge. It's admissible, it's impeaching, it's relevant, and as to the spatial differences, we can cover that up. There's not going to be a 352 problem when you weigh this. You can understand where the people stand up and make these grandiose speeches that are falling on deaf ears to everybody. I don't know who they're spinning it to. The jury's not out here, and we're not impressed at all. We know who's seeking the truth here, and so the question is for them to talk all they want. As the judge, you understand, you have asked me last night to focus on those 3 or 4 areas. We've come back and done exactly what you've asked us to do. Whatever you asked to do in this regard, we've done it. This is admissible, and if there's any question of confusion, I'm sure it'll be cleared up by both sides. And that's the question. And that's what happened. This is a videotape of what actually happened, brought about because they don't do this at the LAPD like other departments do. It's the best evidence that you're ever going to have in this instance. And it's relevant, and I ask the court to let us proceed with this at this point. You've listened to us very patiently, and it's now time to rule, Your Honor. We've been talking about this since January.
All right. Thank you, counsel.
I just had that one thing I wanted to say up.
Well, Your Honor, do we have
If we do have to clear it up, as Mr. Cochran says, concede, we have to clear it up by calling additional witnesses, then it's really a 352 issue.
You say clear it up, if there's any problems.
We're probably calling another dozen witnesses to clear up all the mess that's made by the distortion of that video. So it's an undue consumption of time as well.
Fine. Thank you, counsel. Always interesting to hear these arguments. And I don't mean that facetiously, because I mean it is fascinating since it is a videotape which ostensibly is as accurate a depiction as we will ever get. It is not someone's recollection or interpretation. It's the events as they unfolded. And the court is able to discern from looking at the videotape itself that this videotape was taken at a relevant point in time when the coroner's investigator, Miss Radcliffe, arrives. She appears to be briefed by Detective Lang. We see Radcliffe and Lang at the top of this, what clearly appears to me to be the top of the steps. I then see them move down to within 2 steps above the body of Nicole Brown Simpson at the bottom of the stairs. I observe them to be looking over the body, and Lang appears to be describing to Radcliffe what is there. We do have the benefit of the People's Exhibit, which shows the blood on the steps and the footprints, which appear to be avoided. We have Jacobo arrive. We see him check in with Officer Cummings. We see Detective Langs take care to step over the body of Nicole Brown Simpson. He then holds a measuring stick and a ruler, appears to be measuring things. Then we see him step into the planter area. It appears that when he does that, he looks around and takes care as to when he steps. True, you cannot actually see what it is he is actually stepping upon. That is excerpt number 1, and I find that the probative value outweighs the prejudice on that, and I'll allow it. As to number 2, we start with a distant shot, and then it is shows the corners with the plastic sheeting preparing to remove the body of Nicole Brown Simpson, and then the body placed on the cart. And I take it the probative value of that is the fact that the coroner's people are actually standing in the walkway as they spread out the plastic over the cotton sheet and remove the body. indicating that they were walking in the walkway where the blood was, but they're not walking on the steps where the footprints were, and the footprints remain unobscured, so they appear not to have been disturbed. I find the probative value outweighs the prejudicial value. I'll allow that as well. Excerpt number 3 starts with a distance shot of the crowd around the step area. We see Investigator Fung step out of the planter area where the body of Ronald Goldman was discovered, although we do not see that body. We see him come out not wearing gloves, however, having a paper bag in his hands. The coroners then appear to spread out another plastic sheet and appear to be moving the second body, which is now out on the walkway. That appears to be Ronald Goldman's body from the sequence of events. We see Lang in the planter area watching the wrapping of the second body, Ronald Goldman, and we observe him to be making measurements and taking notes at the time, and I find that the probative value of this also outweighs any prejudicial value. I'll allow this, however, I am going to instruct the jurors that they are to take into consideration in evaluating these videotapes the angle and any distortion that there might be from using the lenses and shape, the lenses that were actually used.
Thank you.
Let's have the jury, please.
John, there's one other, can we have, step out, there's one other, be sure.
That one I have concern about because it stops abruptly. I want to see the entire tape from which it was taken. Detective Lang, why don't you step outside? Mr. Cochran.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. With regard, we presented this tape. We think this tape is impeaching. We'd ask the court to take a look at it, and perhaps we can answer the questions if there's other parts of the tape. What it shows...
No, I understand what it shows. What it shows is Detective Lang walking out of the Rockingham residence.
Right.
Walks to his car.
Right? He's carrying the tennis shoes, just carrying the tennis shoes, puts them in the right front seat of the car.
Right, and then tape ends.
Right, well, and he then drove, I think the other part, we saw it last night, I think he then, Mr. Blazer can represent, he drove off. That's the point I'd like to hear from Mr. Blazer, but the point is, yesterday, on examination, he says he put it in a box in the trunk, he drove off. It's impeaching, Your Honor, and you hear from Blazer who had the tape.
My point, Mr. Cochran, is that the tape that you gave to me this morning to view stops with him placing it on the front seat of his car. He doesn't enter the car, he doesn't start the car, he doesn't drive off, it just ends. Right there.
Hear from Mr. Blazer, Your Honor.
You know, I've watched that tape many times, and we had that dub made last night. That's basically the end of it. He drives off, I think, is in the tape, but he doesn't take the shoes and put them someplace else. That's the end of the clip.
Well, out of curiosity, why did you choose not to show that to me?
This was part of a long tape that we took just a small clip out of because we just wanted to illustrate putting the shoes on the front seat. There was nothing significant after that.
Go ahead and let you see that. We have a question.
No, that tape is that entire tape is being copied, even though I think we've already given it to the prosecution. We're making copies of everything to give them another set, as well as to provide you with a set of everything that we have. So that tape is now in a studio being copied.
And the point, if I can say this, Your Honor, with regard to it, it's impeaching. And
No,
I can then...
Mr. Cochran, I understand
All right.
the value. I understand
All right.
why you...
I know.
I'm just saying that it doesn't have the impeachment value until he starts up the car and drives off.
Well, I'm sure we can get
With the
that.
tennis shoes still there.
I'm sure we can get that part down here.
If that's true.
And I'm sure I can ask him, didn't you then put the tennis shoes there and then drive off? But I'm sure we can get that. I mean, if that was just a point where he drives off, is that the representation? He drove off at that point?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's exactly the point. So, I mean, I think that the important part is he said under oath
I
here
understand
yesterday what he said,
I recall
put them
what
in
he
the
said.
trunk. Right.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't become probative until he drives off, does it?
You know, I can.
I think when he puts them in that front seat, it's pretty probative. He didn't tell us that yesterday. But I understand what you're saying, and
Well, if the tape ends with him putting he reaches in and places it on the passenger side of the front seat, and then my tape ends.
The court allows us to
Abruptly.
see, and we'll do what we can.
All right.
Bob, Mr. Blazer says he'll go, leave and get it right now.
Well, let's start with the jury with what we have.
Sure, that's fine. He'll be back.
Because we're not, the court's not allowing it in until we see the...
That's correct. All right, Deputy Magnaro, let's have the jurors, please. We've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, my apologies to you for the delay in getting started today. Oftentimes, as I have explained to you, there are facts and circumstances regarding the people involved in this case that the court has no control over. And things happened this morning that we were just not able to get started when we had hoped to get started. I apologize to you for the inactivity and downtime. I realize that you would much rather be here participating with us than being cooped up in those little rooms. And I understand that you're there, and believe me, one of the things that weighs heaviest on my mind is knowing where you are and what you're doing. But unfortunately, these things happen, and we've tried to get up to speed and running as fast as we could this morning. And with that said, Detective Lang, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
You're reminded you're still under oath. Mr.
Yes, sir.
Cochran, you may conclude your cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Detective Lang. When we concluded our cross-examination yesterday, I'd ask you some questions about this, what's called a rape kit. A rape kit is basically the ability of the coroner's office to obtain trace evidence, generally in the pubic area of a male or female. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And so no one has to be raped in order to take a swab of the genital area of male or females. Is that correct?
I believe they look for evidence of a sexual assault prior to that being done.
All right. They may very well do that, but they can take the evidence without any evidence of a particular rape. Isn't that correct?
I've never known that. There's usually evidence of such things before that would happen.
Well, I guess what I'm asking you, in order to collect trace evidence, one could check the pubic hairs of a particular decedent. Isn't that correct?
If one were looking for trace evidence, certainly.
Yes. And one could check the cervix area of a female. Isn't that correct?
Certainly.
And I think you indicated to us they do this by using some kind of a swab. Is that correct?
It's correct, as well as visual examination.
All right. And then they can make some kind of trace analysis. The coroner's criminalists can do this after the decedent, after these swabs are taken from the decedent. Isn't that correct?
Certainly.
Now, Detective Lang, when you arrived at the scene at Bundy there at 425, you knew nothing about this case except you had two dead bodies. Isn't that correct?
No, I was informed that one of the victims,
Now, I'm talking about when you first, so we understand each other. When you first got there, what did you know?
that one of the victims was the ex-wife of Mr. OJ Simpson.
All right. But did you know anything else other than that?
Just that there was a male victim and a female victim.
So you didn't know anything about the time of death, did you?
No.
You didn't know at that time initially how these two individuals had met their death, did you?
No.
And as part of your investigation, as an investigator, would you agree with your homicide manual that the preliminary examination and investigation is very, very important and very paramount? Would you agree with that?
I agree that all aspects of the investigation are very important.
Specifically, the things you do at the very beginning. Isn't that a fair statement?
Certainly.
And your note-taking is also very important in that regard, is it not?
Yes.
And you would agree that in seeking to charge someone with a double homicide, the issue of the time of death may become very relevant. Would you agree with that?
It could, yes.
And, sir, with regard to a particular decedent, either decedent in this case, wouldn't you think it would be relevant to determine the last individual that either one of these decedents came in contact with?
That's certainly something that would be taken into consideration.
For if, let's assume that in the case of Ms. Nicole Brown Simpson, she had a visitor at her residence as late as 10:30 p.m. Would that be relevant to you to know that?
I had no evidence or information that that was the case.
I didn't ask you
If in
that.
fact that were the case, I'd certainly want to speak to that person, yes.
The question is, if she'd had a visitor as late as 10:30 p.m. on June 12th, 1994, that would be relevant, would it not?
I would think so.
In fact, you would like to know, or would you like to know, whom she talked to on the phone that particular evening, wouldn't you?
Certainly.
And if you had evidence that she'd had a visitor that evening, as you said, you'd want to talk to that person, wouldn't you?
I would.
Now, the two Simpson children were taken down to the West Los Angeles Police Station, isn't that correct?
That's what I was told, yes.
And at some point, you are aware that one of the officers who were looking after these children, may I finish the statement, Your Honor? This will not be hearsay. May I finish the statement?
May I concur with counsel?
Sure.
Why don't you counsel with counsel? Thank you. All right, let me see counsel.
see where I went.
Sometime you were aware that officers at the West LA station were looking after the children.
Thank you. Couldn't find it on one of the screens.
And his answer, I think, was, yes, somebody told me that.
All right. Let me just try to restate it, Your Honor. At some point in the course of your investigation, you became aware that one of the officers at the West Los Angeles station talked to the elder daughter, the daughter of Mr. Simpson, Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, at West Los Angeles station. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
And you know the nature of that purported conversation. Is that correct?
yes, I do.
And that conversation took place at what time in the early morning hours of June 13th, 1994?
I don't know the time.
It would be after the children were taken down to the station. Isn't that correct?
I would assume that, yes.
And you read the purported statement, did you not?
Yes,
You sort of exceeded the court's largesse in allowing this.
Certainly, Your Honor. I appreciate the court's largesse.
All right.
And with regard to that, did you then yourself or anyone under your direction go and talk to Sidney Simpson about the
Yes.
statements she had made?
I did not personally, but I had that done.
And who did that?
The Brown family.
The Brown family?
I was informed that the
Just a
children
moment.
were,
Let's be responsive if you can. Who in the Brown family? Can you answer that?
Denise Brown,
And when was that?
sometime after.
I think we have Denise Brown in the audience
Yes,
here. We're going to
she's right
discuss.
here.
Ms. Brown, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave since we're
Thank you.
discussing facts and circumstances that involve you in the case. Thank you. All right, Denise Brown is withdrawn from the courtroom.
Thank you, Ed. Let me see if I understand this correctly. You asked Denise Brown to talk to Sidney Simpson?
Would you like me to explain it to you,
No.
sir?
No, I want you to answer my questions first, if you can do that, please, sir.
I-
Ron, if that's an objection, that's argumentative, because the witness is allowed to explain the
I'm
answer to
asking the questions,
No,
Your
the
Honor.
question.
Counsel's cutting off.
Ask the question, Mr.
Thank you, Ed.
Cochran.
Did you ask Denise Brown to talk to Sidney Simpson?
That's correct.
All right. When did you ask her to do that?
Sometime after learning about the statement.
Well, when, sir?
I don't know when exactly.
Do you know what month it was in?
I believe it was probably in the month of July, perhaps.
July of 1994.
Yes,
All right.
correct.
And were you present when and if she ever talked to Sidney Simpson?
No, I was not.
Did you write a report with regard to this?
No,
There are no police reports at all written with regard to your request and what happened after that regarding this conversation?
would you like me to explain again?
I'm asking you, can you answer the question? The question is, are there any reports?
I'm trying to. There are no reports.
When you made the request of Denise Brown to talk to Sidney Simpson, did you do that over the phone or in person?
Over the phone.
And did you yourself ever make an effort to speak to either of the children?
No,
Did you ever ask any other police officer to speak to either of the children?
I did not want to do that because of the circumstances described to me by the Brown family.
The question is, did you ask any police officer to speak to either of the children,
I
sir?
did not.
Now, do you have that logged anywhere that you asked Denise Brown to talk to Sidney Simpson? That logged in your log anywhere? In any of those 5 books you have there?
I don't believe so.
Did you ever talk with the police officer who spoke with Sidney Simpson on the early morning hours of June 13th, 1994?
I believe I had that done by another officer in checking out her statement to see if it was accurate.
So now I ask you, did you ever ask? Just,
I would not have done it then. I had it done by someone.
all right, who did you have it done by?
I believe it was Detective Phillips.
And did you write a report based upon what you asked Detective Phillips to do?
There was nothing to write, no.
There are no reports in that connection. What was the name of the officer or officers who spoke with Sidney Simpson on the night or the early morning hours of June 13th?
I don't recall. It was the female officer who transported her to the station.
Do you have a report there that would refresh your recollection regarding that?
There's probably a report in there.
Can you find it for us?
Yes.
Please, sir. Look at page, maybe I can approach you on it. May I approach it? Save some time.
Why don't you show that to counsel? You may.
I'd like to place before you, sir, Los Angeles Police Department continuation sheet form 15.09. And so since we're referring to this, should I mark this in to that point?
I think you're just using it to refresh his recollection,
Yeah,
correct?
to this point. All right, very well. I'd like to place this before you and ask you if you would read, why don't you read the last three paragraphs and see whether or not that refreshes your recollection. Right, the name of the officer who spoke to Sidney Simpson in the early morning hours of June 13, 1994.
Okay.
Have you now read that?
Yes.
And does that refresh your recollection of as to the name of the police officer that you had in mind who spoke with Justin and overheard a conversation between Justin and Sidney that night?
I may have missed that part. The officer's name was there?
Let me maybe start those paragraphs.
No, I didn't see the officer's name there.
Why don't you start? Just start with that paragraph.
I'm sorry, I do not see the officer's name. Okay.
All right, does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
And what is the name of the officer who spoke with Sidney Simpson and overheard the conversation between Sidney and Justin?
Objection, this seems back on evidence.
Sustained.
Well, let me rephrase it. What is the name of the officer who spoke with Sidney Simpson?
Officer Vasquez.
And is that a male or female officer?
female.
And it's an officer in West Los Angeles?
That's correct.
And is that the same officer that you asked Phillips to talk with at some
Yes.
point? And do you have any other reports in connection with anything that was said to the children other than this page that I've shown you at this point?
No.
Did you make more than one request to Denise Brown? Strike that. Did you request anybody else in the Brown family to talk to either of the children other than Denise Brown?
The recollection is that the request was made to the entire family.
All right. And that Denise Brown stepped forward? The family chose her?
When I made the request, Denise
Can you just
Brown,
answer that? How did Denise Brown end up being the one who was
Well-
appointed? Do you know that? Did you ask her?
I was going to explain that.
Well, I'm trying to get you to just answer the question.
Objection, Your Honor, he's allowed to explain if he needs to.
Wait.
Matt, ask the question.
No, but your question, he was allowed to answer the question.
Trying to ask a specific question so I can get a specific answer, Your Honor, an answer that's not a rambling long answer. So
Why don't you rephrase
may I ask
the question
again?
then?
Yes. Did you ask Denise Brown to talk to either one of these children? Yes or no?
Yes.
And was that after you had asked the General Brown family to talk to the children?
I believe the first request was to Denise Brown.
All right. And as near as you can tell, that was in July of 1994. Is that right?
I don't have a very accurate recollection of when that was. It was shortly after reading that report.
All right. And when you say that report, you refer to the report that I have in my hand?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, I'd like to mark this report, at least at this point, as Defendant's Nixon order.
All right.
Defendant's 1042.
1042.
Counsel has seen it, Your Honor, at this point. Now, in the course of your investigation, do you know who Faye Resnick is?
Yes.
And how did you become aware of the name Faye Resnick in the course of your investigation?
When I learned that Faye Resnick was a friend of victim Nicole Brown Simpson.
In the course of your investigation, did you learn that Faye Resnick moved in and started living with
Objection, Your Honor,
Nicole?
objection. It's all assumed facts, not evidence.
Sustained.
Ask him.
Sustained.
Did you learn, in the course of your investigation, whether or not Faye Resnick moved in with Nicole Brown Simpson on Friday, June 3rd, 1994?
This is the same.
I'm asking, did you learn that?
Sustained. Sustained.
In the course of your investigation, did you ever ascertain whether or not Miss Nicole Brown Simpson had anyone who lived with her in the month before June 12th, other than the children?
I had heard there was someone living with her, yes.
All right, you heard that in the course of your investigation?
Yes.
And did you pin it down and find out that someone had actually moved in with her in the month of June of 1994? Did you ascertain that in the course of your investigation?
That was information that I did receive, yes.
And did you find out at some point in the course of your investigation that Faye Resnick moved in with Nicole Brown Simpson on or about June 3rd, 1994?
Same.
You found out.
Same
Overruled.
objection. You're saying no foundation?
Overruled.
That is what I had heard, yes.
And did you verify that?
I personally had no way of verifying that.
Well, did you ever talk to Faye Resnick?
I did not interview her. I believe my partner in the district attorney's office interviewed Ms. Resnick.
Well, who's your partner?
Detective Van Etter.
All right, and as such, he is the co-lead investigator in this case, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And did you not find out,
Objection, hearsay.
may I finish the question?
Yes.
Did you not find out in the course of your investigation that in truth and in fact, Faye Resnick became a resident at 875?
Let me see counsel side by close. Gentlemen, be seated. Mr. Lang, you can step down. All right, records reflect the jury has withdrawn to the jury room. Mr. Darden, let me give you a piece of advice. Take about 3 deep breaths, as I'm going to do, and then contemplate what you're going to say next. You want to take a recess now for a moment?
I don't require a recess, Your Honor.
All right. I'll hear your comment at this point. I've cited you. Do you have any response?
I would like counsel, Your Honor.
You can have counsel. You have counsel. You want to call your counsel? Want to have somebody from your appellate division come down?
I'd like to be pronounced Your Honor.
You represent Mr. Darden in this matter?
I don't know if I'm legally entitled to, but I would like to be heard on his behalf.
All right.
What we are all concerned about here, Your Honor, is that there is a method of cross-examination that is being conducted by Mr. Cochran
It's
that
not
has,
what I'm interested in, Ms. Clark.
and that is the impetus for the exchange at sidebar, Your Honor. And we are, all of us, greatly concerned about what the jury is getting. They're getting, that is the impetus, that is
Clark.
what
Ms. Clark.
led to
I don't want to hear
the
this.
exchange at sidebar, Your Honor. Mr.
No, Ms. Clark. I don't want to hear about that. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the refusal to avoid, excuse me, the refusal to obey the court's order, not to address that issue, not to speak to the court, as I was hearing from one counsel, not to interrupt the court. And the court gave 3 admonitions, and Mr. Darden chose to ignore those.
Mr. Darden did not choose to ignore them. I think Mr. Darden was simply at that time overcome with what has been transpiring with Mr. Cochran's cross-examination. It was not a desire to flaunt the court's authority, although I would point out to the court that the court's order to stop and desist has been ignored by the defense time and time and time again with no citation. No citation. Mr. Darden is simply responding to the events that have been occurring in this courtroom today and have been occurring throughout cross-examination. I myself have become overwhelmed by the fact that the jury has been given hearsay, has been given, and the record will stand by what I said, slop, in the form of counsel testifying before every witness.
Didn't I just tell you I didn't want to hear that? I'm interested in a contempt proceeding.
And if the court would like to set the matter for OSC, then we will proceed to OSC. I don't think it's required. I think
No,
that
it's not required. I can do it summarily. Do you want to push it to that?
no.
Then how come you
I-
haven't taken the opportunity? When I invite counsel to take 3 deep breaths and think very carefully about what they're going to say to the court next, that's an opportunity to get up and say, gee, I'm sorry, I lost my head there. I apologize to the court. I apologize to counsel. When you get that response, then we move on. When you tell the court you want to have an order to show cause, that's a different response. That says you want to fight. You want to fight some more with the court? You're welcome to do so. I'm going to take a recess. I'm going to give you and Mr. Darden an opportunity to think about this carefully, with about 10 deep breaths, perhaps. Have I made myself clear?
You have? Shall I take off my watch and my jewelry?
10 minutes. Probably bad karma, Mr. Newfield, today. Hmm?
We'll ask him to step outside if you like.
Good afternoon, counsel.
Yeah.
Any further comment?
We would ask leave of the court to recess at this time so that we can be present with appellate counsel tomorrow morning.
Pretty simple procedure. You wish to pursue this?
We are only asking for the opportunity at this time to confer with counsel.
Well, you seem to have two options. Either you offer an apology to the court and we proceed, or we proceed to a contempt hearing. Those are your choices. Request for a continuance is denied.
We would like the opportunity to confer with counsel before we resolve this matter, Your Honor. And is the court then not going to afford us that opportunity?
Nope.
We could proceed with the trial and resolve the matter at the conclusion of the day or in the morning tomorrow. And that way we wouldn't have to take up any more court time with this matter at this time.
It's a very simple way to terminate this, Ms. Clark.
I'm aware of that.
I think I've offered it to you twice already now. I don't know that I have to do it a third time. But I'm prepared to go forward if you wish to choose, if you choose otherwise.
Well, even if the court is prepared to go forward with the contempt proceeding, we're entitled to counsel, are we not?
It's a civil contempt, counsel. Has to be adjudicated immediately. Unless you want to make it a criminal contempt and have a jury trial.
No.
Love to see the voir dire in that case.
Me too. Oh. Can we use the same jury, Your Honor?
Ms. Clark, you know, all levity aside, I've offered you now 3 times an opportunity to end this right now. This is very simple. And perhaps if Mr. Darden had the opportunity to review the transcript that I have before me, he'd see the wisdom of that.
And perhaps we would like to review it as well, but why don't we review the transcript, Your
Mr.
Honor?
Spence, your comments aren't necessary. I heard him. I have great ears.
I'm sorry?
Never mind.
Okay.
You guys make me feel like Mr. Kimball.
Who?
Never mind.
You're not literate enough.
Let me see counsel at the sidebar without the reporter, please. Mr. Hodgman, you join us, please. All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Darden?
Your Honor, thank you for the opportunity to review the transcript of the sidebar. It appears that the court is correct that perhaps my comments may have been or are somewhat inappropriate. I apologize to the court. I meant no disrespect. However, I did have some concerns I would like to take up with the court and, when the court is available to hear my concerns. I apologize.
Mr. Darden, I accept your apology. I apologize to you for my reaction as well. You and I have known each other for a number of years, and I know that your response was out of character, and I'll note it as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Let's have the jury, please.
Became aware at some point that Faye Resnick moved in with Nicole Brown Simpson on or about June 3rd, 1994.
Sustain. Sustain. Rephrase the question. You can ask him if he conducted any investigation
Thank you.
regarding the residence.
Thank you.
And what
Did
he
you have occasion to conduct an investigation to determine whether or not Faye Resnick moved in at the 1st of June, 1994 with Nicole Brown Simpson?
I did not personally.
And did you have someone under your direction do that?
Under my direction, no. I believe my partner made that interview.
All right, and your partner's Van Adder?
Yes.
What did Van Adder do to make that determination?
He interviewed Ms. Resnick.
And who was present during that interview?
I wasn't there, so I...
All right, have you reviewed the interview, sir?
I have been told about portions of the interview. I have not read an interview.
You've not read it?
No. I
Was it
believe
conduct-
it was perhaps tape recorded anyway. I'm not sure.
All right, and you've not listened to the tape?
I have not.
And where was that interview conducted, if you know?
Objection hearsay.
Can he ask if he knows you?
He knows some hearsay.
He indicated he wasn't here. I don't think this is the appropriate witness.
All right. And it was your partner, Van Adder, who conducted it? All right. You have never talked to her personally yourself?
Just in passing, a greeting.
But in connection, not only just a greeting, with connection with whether or not she ever lived at that residence, have you ever queried her at all?
No.
Now, with regard to the Akita, the brown Akita, Cato, did you see that Akita at any time on June 13th, 1994, sir?
No, I did not.
When you arrived at the scene after 425, was the Akita out in the street anywhere at that time?
I believe by that time the animal had been impounded.
All right, did you have, as part of your investigative duties, any tests or any photographs taken of any substances on that Akita?
There was an examination of the Akita, but it was not that day.
All right, was that done in the course of your investigation in this case?
Yes.
And when was the examination of the Akita?
I believe it was during the time of the service of the second search warrant, if I'm not mistaken, on June 28th, 94,
Where was this examination done, if you know?
at 360 North Rockingham.
The Akita was back at Mr. Simpson's house at that time?
Yes.
What was that date again, sir?
I may be mistaken, but my recollection is June 28th, I believe, at the time of the service of the second search warrant.
All right, and what kind of examination was done at that point, if you recall?
The animal was examined as to its aggressiveness and there were other behavioral type tests done by the dog expert.
All right, and who is that dog expert?
Sergeant Yarnell.
And do you have a report from Sergeant Arnell, of course, of your investigation?
There was a report generated, yes.
May we see it, please?
I don't believe it's here. I believe it was turned over a couple of weeks ago.
Turned over to whom? The DA's office?
I believe so.
And you don't have a copy of it?
I am not aware of one. I could check.
Well, will it take very long? If you can check.
I can check one section real
Yes.
quick here.
Would you please?
I don't see it here.
You don't have it, but it was by Sergeant Yarnell, and that report was as a result of an examination that was done on or about June 28th, 1994, best of your recollection. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Now, what I had in mind, though, sir, was do you know whether or not anyone ever checked the blood that was supposedly on the cicada at a time before June 28th, 1994?
I saw no one do that.
All right. In the course of your investigation in this case, did you ever have any photographs taken of the Akita between the period June 13th and June 28th, 1994?
I did not.
Do you know whether or not your co-lead investigator, Van Etter, had that done?
I don't believe he did.
Did you, in the course of your investigation as the senior lead investigator in this case, or co-lead investigator, did you have occasion to review the notes by Mark Furman as they relate to the dog on that particular, the night of June 12th, 1994?
I reviewed some notes of Detective Furman.
All right, and do you recall whether or not there was an indication?
Objection, hearsay.
May I finish, sir?
Objection, other convenience.
May I finish, please? I'll restate it.
Sure, the question, but it sounds suspicious.
No, I said, let me restate it.
All right.
I have a suspicious question, sir. With regard
You
to,
have not the proof in it, sidebar?
may I just ask the question, Your Honor? Detective Lang?
We will allow the court to rule before.
Let's hear the question, but
Okay.
be cautious, Mr.
All
Carroll.
right. Detective Lang, at any time, as the senior co-lead investigator in this case, did you ever conduct any tests or direct anyone to conduct any tests as to whether or not the Akita dog on the night of June 12th may have bitten anyone?
Subsequent to that, yes.
And when was that you conducted these tests?
Again, that would be the tests of June 28th.
Do you know where that Akita had been between the period of the 13th and the 28th of June?
I believe at the Rockingham residence.
Were you present when the Akita was brought back to the Rockingham address?
No.
Did you see, when you were at the Rockingham address at about 5:30 on June 13th, 1994, did you see the Akita Cato there?
I don't recall seeing the dog there at that time.
Does that mean it wasn't there, you don't recall seeing it?
I don't recall seeing it.
Now, there are two Akitas at Rockingham, isn't that correct?
Yes.
There's another Akita, the black dog is also an Akita, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you find out that dog's name?
Yes.
What's that dog's name?
I believe it's Chachi.
All right, so the black dog is Chachi and the brown dog is Cato, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did you find out, do you know, in the course of your investigation, who bought both of those dogs?
Objection, irrelevant,
It
hearsay.
becomes it will become relevant, Your Honor.
I'd like to, we have not the proof in it.
It'll become relevant. Your Honor. Did you find out who bought those dogs?
I had heard who bought those dogs.
Who bought them?
Objection.
That's hearsay.
Well, how did you make that determination of who bought the dogs?
I don't recall. I just heard who bought the animals. I don't recall. There was no specific reason for someone to discuss that with me. I just heard that.
Do you have a report of that connection?
With who bought the dogs?
Who bought the dogs?
No.
All right. Now, on June 28th, when Sergeant Yarnell was there, were both Akitas there at that point?
I believe so.
In the course of your investigation, did you ascertain whether or not the Akita Kato had at some point lived prior to June of 1994, had lived at 360 North Rockingham?
No.
Never made that determination?
No.
Do you know, and in the course of your investigation, did you ascertain when the Akita Kato was purchased?
No.
Were you present when Sergeant Yarnell did whatever tests he did on the 28th?
I was at the location. I did not observe the entire examination, but I saw him with the animal.
Do you know whether or not he took any photographs of the Akita Kato that day?
I don't know.
Do you know whether or not he took any photographs of his teeth or gums?
I don't know.
No. While we're on the subject of dogs, did you ever use any dog to help you in your investigation on or about June 13th, 1994? Did you use such as anything like a scent dog at all? Do you ever do that in your investigations?
A scent dog?
Yes, a dog who would seek to pick up a scent of some individual.
No.
Have you ever done that in the course of your investigation?
I have not, no.
Now, with regard to the dog Kato on that night, you looked inside the interior of that residence, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Did you see any bloody paw prints inside the interior of the residence?
No.
Did you see any bloody paw prints that went westerly toward the rear gate of that particular residence?
No.
You saw paw prints, did you not?
I saw what I believed to be paw prints, yes.
And the paw prints that you saw moved in an easterly direction from the front gate out toward the sidewalk, is that correct?
Initially, yes.
And then did they make a right turn to go kind of southbound on Bundy?
That's correct.
Then did they make a right turn to go kind of westbound on Dorothy for a short period of time?
That's correct.
You never saw any paw prints either going inside the interior or in that long walkway there on the side of the house, on the north side of the house, did you?
No.
And while we're about it, as the investigating officer, can you tell us, sir, the distance, the approximate distance from the front gate of Bundy that we talk so much about to the rear gate at Bundy? How far is that in feet?
I believe it's approximately 110 feet.
All right, 110?
Approximately.
All right, and to the sidewalk of Bundy, to the rear gate would be about how far?
I think perhaps 120 feet. I believe the length from the sidewalk to the alley is approximately 120 feet, so I can only estimate from there.
All right, so from the sidewalk, and we're talking about the sidewalk on Bundy, right there, to the rear gate, is that correct?
Yes.
Would be about 120 feet?
It may be less, because again, I believe the sidewalk to the rear alley is approximately 120. I have a schematic that would give us a scaled distance, but if you're asking my recollection, it's probably 100 to 110 feet, somewhere in there.
I would like, and I think we'd all want your best recollection if you can give it to us, sir.
Well, it would be if I would look at my schematic, certainly that would.
If that's not too much trouble, can you do that?
Certainly. Looking at the ground floor schematic on Bundy.
Yes, both council may approach.
To point out on the schematic, the sidewalk is at an angle. So as an estimate, from the rear gate to the front sidewalk as an estimate, I would say 120 feet.
All right, and looking at, you're referring to a schematic, which will not mark, Your Honor, but there's a schematic in his homicide book. And pursuant to that schematic, your best estimate at this point is about 120 feet from the front of the sidewalk of Bundy to the rear gate of Bundy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. I believe you'd indicated the other day that the intercom inside the house worked, so that someone standing outside that gate could speak to someone inside that house. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you had tried to see whether or not the front gate, it would be possible to open the front gate from inside the house. Is that a fair statement? You tried to do that?
Yes.
And did you have the help of anyone else when you tried to do that?
Yes.
And the conclusion you came to that was inoperable at the time you tested it?
I was able to get a sound, a clicking sound out of it, but we couldn't get the release to work properly.
All right. Now, you'd never done this before that time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what date did you do this test to try to determine whether it was operable?
Initially on the 13th, and it was done subsequent to that.
All right. And did you have anyone ever from the Brown family to assist you in that at all in the course of your trying this to see whether or not it worked?
I don't believe the Brown family was there when we did this.
You believe they were?
I believe they were not there.
Okay, you believe they were not?
Yes.
All right. And so, at the times at least that you tried it, the intercom worked, but you could not get the front gate open from inside the residence. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
In the course of your investigation in this case, did you ever have occasion to go to Mr. Ronald Goldman's home?
I personally did not.
Did anyone under your direction go there?
Yes.
And who was that?
Detectives Tippin and Carr.
Tippin and Carr?
Yes.
Is that Tippin?
Yes.
Carr?
That's correct.
Do you know whether or not they found out was there shower and bath at Mr. Goldman's home?
Was there a shower and bath?
Yes.
I believe there was.
Did you have a drawing made of the interior of that residence?
I believe there were photographs taken. I don't believe there was a schematic.
When do you recall when Tippin and Carr went to the residence of Mr. Goldman's?
No, I don't recall a specific date.
In the course of your investigation, did you ascertain whether or not he had a roommate on the date of June 12th, 1994?
I don't believe he did.
Now, did he drive a vehicle to the Bundy location, if you know, that night?
Yes, he did.
And what kind of vehicle was that?
I believe it was a Toyota.
And do you know whether or not that vehicle belonged to him?
It did not.
Belonged to some other person?
Yes.
Where, if any, in relation to the address at 875 South Bundy, did you find this vehicle parked? You found it so parked?
It was parked on Dorothy Street on the north side of Dorothy, facing in a westerly direction near the alley.
On the north side of Dorothy, facing the westerly direction? Toward the alley?
Westerly direction, and that would be west of Bundy.
All right, in the alley that runs behind Bundy there, is that correct?
Yes.
At what point and on what day did you discover this vehicle belonging to Mr. Goldman, or that Mr. Goldman had driven there?
It was discovered on the 13th.
At what time?
What time?
Yes, what time of day, sir?
I believe it was approximately 3 p.m.
Now, as I understand it, when you first saw this, the glove and the knit cap at Bundy, they were under some foliage or plants, or plant, is that correct?
Yes.
And have you recently been to Bundy? Have you been there? You were out there with the jury view, were you not?
Yes.
And that plant that the glove and the knit cap were under appears more full on the photographs than it appeared at the time of the jury view. Would you agree with that?
It appeared about the same to me. Perhaps it appeared about the same.
Appeared about the same to you?
Yes.
Let me see if I can get one of the exhibits here.
Can I ask Mr. Douglas to put 56A on the...
And he did an excellent job. You folks are determined to make today exciting. All right, thank you, counsel.
Is it possible that second from the step down?
Yes, why don't you take the pointer there, Detective?
With regard to 56A, a couple of questions over here. The plant that we're talking about, the foliage that we're talking about, is I guess depicted in 56. Is that the same one there in 56C? In
56C?
Yeah.
No, I believe it's below that.
All right, well, let's look.
It's one here.
Okay, let's look then at 56I. Depicted in 56I, is that correct? Right here.
Appears to be, yes.
All right, and in that connection, what is depicted in 56I appears to be some dark object and what appears to be perhaps a glove. And is this photograph 56I for identification with a 103 mark there on, Your Honor? Is that a fair and accurate portrayal of the way you first saw this cap and glove on that particular day?
It's in the general area, but I don't believe it's in the exact location I observed.
Had this cap and glove at some point been moved that morning?
I believe the glove was.
And was it moved after Mr. Goldman's body was moved?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you ever write a report indicating that the glove had been moved at all?
No,
Were you aware at the time that the glove had been moved?
not at the time.
When did you become aware of it? The trial started?
Not when I observed the photograph with the glove in a different position.
Or when you observed it in a different position, why didn't you write a report at that point?
So I don't need to write a report. I have the photographs.
But you did not write a report?
I didn't observe it being moved. I had no personal knowledge of it being moved. All I have are the photographs. And for my certain purposes, they spoke for themselves.
All right, now you tell us the other day that you felt when evidence had been moved, the best procedure would be to try and document that if you could, of how and why it had been moved. Is that a correct statement?
And the documentation, in my mind, is the photographs.
All right, so, and they are.
The witness to be allowed to present the witness
Well,
stand
I'm not finished with the
for the
witness.
examination.
I'm not finished with this. So with regard to, so that we're clear, with regard to 56I and 103, there's never a report written about it being moved. Is that right?
There's no report.
Okay. With regard to the envelope that's depicted in 56J, in the course of your looking at photographs, did you ascertain that it also had been moved at some point?
Yes.
And then, would I be correct in assuming there's no report with regard to that either? Is that correct?
Same situation.
All right. Now, this plant that we were talking about here in 56I, did your testimony that this photograph, 56I, which was taken, I presume, somewhere around June 13th in the early morning hours, is a fair representation of how that plant looked at that time? Is that correct?
That's a close-up view of the plant. Perhaps a fair representation would be one from the back, but I would say so. You know,
Well, we have to take-
for what we have. Yeah.
This is what I have, all right? And so based upon what I have here, is that a fair representation, the way that plant looked?
Based upon what you have.
All
Yeah.
right. Now, when you're out there on that Sunday, the day of the jury view, does that look to you about the same fullness with regard to that plant as you saw that day?
Once again, I would like to see a shot a little farther away. Again, it appears to be about the same. Yeah.
I think it's about the same. I noticed there's some blood splatters on the, apparently blood splatters on that plant. You do any testing on those blood splatters?
There were blood spatters everywhere, and not every plant leaf was collected, no.
No, that's not what I asked. I asked you, did you do any testing or have any testing done regarding the blood splatters on this particular plant depicted in 56I?
I don't believe that was done.
All right, that's all I've asked. I mean, well, I got him up there. Let me see now. Okay. For the record, we're now looking at 45A. I just want to call your attention briefly to 45A, people's 45A identification. And I want to ask you just a couple of questions regarding, let's start with 45D. You see 45D here? There appear to be a pair of white shoes, I guess on the landing above where the Simpson's body was, and a pair of black shoes. First of all, let's take the white shoes. Do you know whose shoes those were standing there?
I could hazard a guess.
Well, let's see. You were out there that day and you saw who was wearing white. Who do you think the shoes were?
I believe they belong to the photographer, Mr. Rokar.
Rokar?
I believe so.
All right. And now these black shoes are not very descriptive, but can you tell us whose shoes those are?
I believe they're mine.
So you would recognize your own shoes.
I believe I'm wearing them.
Same shoes. Let's say I'd like to mark those and evidently not. I'm kidding. So at any rate, these are your shoes and these are Rokar shoes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Best you can recall?
Yes.
All right, then I have one more. And you are aware, are you not, that you cannot always see footprints with the naked eye? You're aware of that, right?
I'm sure they can always win.
You are aware that you cannot always see footprints with the naked eye. You aware of that?
It would depend on lighting and angle, but it's certainly possible that you might not see all of them, yes.
All right. And if I might, we're now referring to 54. People's 54 game. Just want to ask you one question about 54. You recognize this shoe standing right here, adjacent to the plant we talked about earlier. Recognize that black shoe?
It's the same type as I have, but I don't know if it's mine.
It's not a police issue shoe, is it?
Would not be.
All right. So, is that your shoe?
As I said, it may be because I have those types of shoes.
And so, Your Honor, for the record, we're looking at People's 54-2, and that shoe is standing right in the grouting, right where there's some blood in the grouting, adjacent to the plant where we can see the cap and the glove. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
That shoe appears to be a man's shoe,
Appears to be.
and you don't know whether it's your shoe or not.
No.
But it's similar to the same shoes you wear.
That's correct.
All right. Now, I have some questions about this Mary Kate Monday. And we're referring now to 53A. You have previously described for us something about these little cards and how these numbers are placed on various exhibits. I want you to look first of all at 53B, and I see 115 and 116. How are those numbers placed there, if you recall?
Those are placed by the criminals.
All right, and the criminalist selects a particular number, then there's a photograph taken of that particular, whatever they're seeking to pick there, is that correct?
Yes.
And so that we're clear for perspective for the jurors, this 115 and 116, is this the rear gate?
Yes.
And there's also a 117, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in the course of your investigation in this case, there was another 115 and 116 numbers somewhere at that scene, is that correct?
I don't know. There may have been.
Okay. And I may use both. Now I want to show you, and I can show you both of them at the same time if you like. Put both of them at the same time, here for the record, so we're clear. Mr. Douglas is safely holding 53A. So I want you to look at 53A. I want you to look at the numbers. You see this 115, 116, 117, which you've told us is the rear gated Bundy, is that correct?
Yes.
Now I want you to look at this particular exhibit, which is 48A, et cetera. And you see this 115 here?
Yes, I do.
Which is 48G, which purports to be a blood drop. Now, this 115 here, what is that 115?
That's a photo identification number apparently put down by the photographer and the journalist.
So let's see, are you saying we have two 115s?
I believe these were taken on different days.
No, that's not what I asked you. Do we have two 115s?
That's pretty obviously,
All right, so this 115 here is a blood drop, is that correct?
right.
And the 115 back here is allegedly a blood drop on the rear gate, is that correct?
That appears to be that way.
All right, and is there also, there's a 117. Now, is 117 allegedly a blood drop that was collected supposedly at the rear of the residence?
Yes.
That was placed there by the photographer?
I'm assuming that, yes.
Well, you recognize that as a card, don't you?
That's the type of card the photographer would put down, yes.
All right, now, and over here, if we look at 117, there's a 117 here with regard to the fence, is that correct?
Yes, there is.
Now, was that a separate photographer or was it just a mistake made? How do we have the same numbers?
Two dates, two different times, two different photographers.
Let's see if I understand this. You mean to tell me that if you take photographs on one day, let's say on June 13th, use 115, 116, 117, but you come back on, let's say, July 3rd, use the same numbers? Is
No.
that acceptable procedure, sir?
No, I don't mean to tell you that, but you may want to ask that of the man who did it.
All right, but you're telling us about separate dates, so you're the investigator. I'm just asking you at this point. I don't have any yet. So would that be acceptable procedure in Los Angeles Police
Well,
Department?
objection, Your Honor, he's
procedures?
just indicated he doesn't know.
I'm going to ask the question.
And counsel's continuing to ask questions of this witness, and he has already indicated he doesn't
So
know.
what's the objection? Foundation?
Foundation, thank you, Your Honor.
I'd like to ask a foundational question.
Then foundational question.
Sorry. With regard to how these numbers are given out by the photographer, it's true, is it not, that if one used one were a photographer, and one used a 115, a 116, and a 117 on June 13th, and in a later date you use sequential numbers, you would start with 118, 119, 120, isn't that correct?
I can't say that. I don't know what his reasoning was.
Well, you've been a homicide investigator for some 20 years, you know?
Your Honor, objection, it's argumentative.
I want to ask him a question. Have you ever, in your
Objection, Your
career,
Honor.
Overruled, Counsel.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the court's ruling.
have you ever, in your career, ever seen a situation where the photographer uses the same numbers for different pictures at the same crime scene?
Objection irrelevant,
Overruled.
beyond the scope of this witness's knowledge.
Overruled.
I have no idea. I don't recall. I may have in 20 years. I don't know.
Well, do you know or not, sir?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't recall seeing that. It's not to say that it hasn't happened before.
But if it okay.
Again, the person to ask would be the photographer. He may have a reason for doing this. I don't know.
Well, now, as the investigating officer in this case, and an overall charge at Bundy, right? Did you ever ask him why he numbered the same numbers for different blood drops at the same scene? Did you ever ask him that?
I don't believe that ever came up.
Okay. I thought Mr. Reynolds needed this all last time. Safe. Now, the glove at Bundy that we were looking at under those, under that particular plant, was that a right or left-handed glove?
Left-handed.
And you've had occasion to examine that glove, have you not? You've looked at it?
I looked at it briefly at the scene and was told not to touch it by the criminalist. Aside from that, I think the next time I saw it was right here in court.
All right, have you ever had occasion to look at that glove and make a determination of whether or not there are any cuts on the finger, outside finger portion of that glove?
I did not personally know.
You never looked at that?
No.
As an investigator, did you ever have any interest in looking at that?
I would have an interest in the criminalist looking at that and when it was examined.
And did the criminal look at it as far as you know?
I believe it was examined, yes.
And you've seen some reports in that connection, have you not?
Yes.
And there are no cuts on that left glove, are there?
Objection, objection.
He knows?
Sustained. Sustained.
All right, when Ms. Clark showed you that glove, I guess last week here in court, did you look at it then?
Yes.
Did you see any cuts on the outside of this left glove, left-handed glove, which reportedly found at Bundy? Did you see any?
No.
Objection, you have no opportunity. That was-
Oral. Now, with regard to the eyeglasses and the envelope, may we approach this for a minute on this area?
Sure.
Counsel, Mr. Cochran.
I'd like to place before you, it was exhibit number 32, which purports to be the envelope on a bag inside of plastic that was allegedly found at the Bundy location. You recognize that envelope?
Yes.
And you recall looking at that envelope at some point?
Yes.
On or about June 13th?
Yes.
Did you look inside at the eyeglasses at that time?
I peered inside an opening, observed some eyeglasses, yes.
All right, and when you peered inside and looked at the eyeglasses at that time, you saw the eyeglasses intact, did you?
I could make out that they were eyeglasses. I couldn't make out that they were necessarily intact.
All right. Do you see the eyeglasses had lenses there or somewhere close by?
I believe I did observe a lens.
All right. Did you observe one lens, two lenses, or what?
It was probably only one. It just appeared to me to be a pair of prescription glasses.
Prescription glasses? And you saw prescription glasses with one lens or two lenses?
No, I observed one of the lenses. The other one, because of the angle I was looking at, I don't believe I could observe it.
All right.
But I may be wrong. I just recall peering in and opening in the envelope and observing what appeared to be prescription glasses.
All right. Why don't you take a look in that envelope now? First of all, look in the envelope and see whether or not you're able to see the lenses. Lens or lenses?
No, I'm not able to.
All right. Let's turn it over. When you turn the container over, the package over, do you see a lens or lenses now?
There's one lens in the plastic bag.
All right. Look carefully. Do you see another lens there?
No.
All right. Now, do you have a report when it was booked of how many lenses there were in these glasses when this was first booked?
The report on the glasses should be contained within the property report when it was booked by the criminalist.
All right. Can you take a look at that? You have that here today?
Yes.
I'll hold this. Can you look at that and tell us whether it indicates how many lenses were in these glasses?
It does not indicate.
Does that indicate? Now, if only one lens was in the glasses, wouldn't that be something that you would note in one of your reports?
No, I would not.
Or you wouldn't note that at all?
Those glasses were kept sealed in that envelope for a reason.
Well, was it you testified or somebody testified that they were torn open so someone could look inside? Did you so testify?
Not torn open. I testified that there was an opening
All right. And
where I could observe the glasses inside. I didn't touch it, and it was maintained in that manner.
And when it was opened so that you could look inside, how many lenses did you see?
I did not open it to look inside.
All right. But at any rate, the report you've just seen doesn't indicate how many lenses were there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, sir, while you were at the scene there at Bundy, after you returned from Rockingham on the morning of June 13th, there came a time when press arrived at the scene. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you saw the press out there, and they were taking video pictures. Did you not see that?
Yes.
And I now want to, Your Honor, with Your Honor's permission, mark as defendant's next in order a videotape, and I want to ask the officer questions regarding that videotape. Mr. Harris, what's the next one?
1043.
1043, Your Honor. I believe it's queued up, and I want to ask.
I'm sorry. Hold on just a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to show you some videotape. You should keep in mind in viewing the videotape that there may be some distortion based upon the length of the lens that is involved in taking. You should take that in consideration in regarding the depth perception with the video. Thank you.
And if the court's permission, I'll be asking some questions during this, and we'll stop it at certain points, Your Honor.
All right.
Now, Detective Lane, can you tell us, stop there, please. Can you tell us and identify those gentlemen there and tell us where this is taken, where this video is taken from?
Yes, I am pictured there to the right.
You're the man with no shirt on?
That's
I'm gonna
correct.
strike that. You're the man with no jacket on.
Well,
I was
yes.
thinking about no hair, and it came out wrong. I'm sorry.
Nice.
The man with no
Thank you.
no
Yes.
coat on.
No jacket.
All right.
The man with his back to us is Lieutenant John Rogers. Behind him, facing us, is Detective Phillips.
Is that Detective Ron Phillips?
Yes.
There apparently is someone bending over in the street with some kind of a container there with kind of light white shoes. Do you see that person?
Yes.
Who is that person?
I believe that's the coroner's investigator, Ratcliffe.
And that's Ms. What's her first name? If you recall.
I believe it's Claudine.
That's Claudine Ratcliffe. And would this be a scene of her arrival at 875 Bundy?
Yes.
And as best we can tell, would that be about what time? 9, 10 in the morning on June 13th?
Approximately.
Now, is there another person in that photograph that you're able to tell us who it is?
Not with this view.
Okay, well, would you keep looking? So this is about 9, 10 in the morning. Mr. Harris, will you continue, please? Now, you stop it there. At this point, you apparently are having a conversation with Claudine Ratcliffe, the
Yes.
coroner's investigator?
Yes.
Are you describing to her what you have there, is that correct?
Yes.
And I notice you have a clipboard in your hand at that point, is that correct?
Yes.
What is that clipboard? What is that?
What is it? It's a
I mean,
clipboard.
what do you use it for?
Writing on?
Okay, and is that part of what you do to write your reports, sir?
Yes.
All right, did you write some of those reports in that book before you, with that kind of clipboard?
Yes.
All right, may continue, Mr. Harris. All right, now, those two gentlemen there in the front of the residence, is that Lieutenant Rogers to the right?
Yes.
And is that Ron Phillips, detective on the left?
Yes.
Is Rogers your immediate superior? He's a lieutenant
He was, yes.
at that time?
Yes.
All right, now, what is depicted in this photograph, sir?
This is Detective Phillips on the right of the photo with his back to us. I can't make out the individual.
Up at the top? Well, we'll proceed on. See if you can recognize the person up on the landing. Who is that man on the landing without a coat?
I'm having a hard time seeing it from here. It's me. Okay.
Does that look like you?
Yes.
All right. 20 questions. Now, what are we seeing here? Just the front of the 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
And that yellow tape running around, is that the perimeter that had been placed up?
Yes.
It was taken down about 3:45 in the afternoon?
Yes.
All right, now stop it there. Who are the two people up on the landing there?
That's me again, and the D is the coroner investigator Ratcliffe.
All right, and in the foreground there, out on the sidewalk or whatever, is that Phillips?
I believe so.
All right, we'll continue. Are you explaining to her what you have there at this point?
Yes.
All right, do you notice your hands? Do you have anything on your hands at that point?
No.
All right, you don't have any gloves or anything on, right?
No.
Now, what's depicted in this photograph? Is that one of the bodies now covered with a sheet?
This is looking westerly, and that's looking towards the body of Miss Simpson.
All right, and the lady on the left, where we've now stopped it, is that again the coroner's investigator?
Yes.
All right, we continue on. Are you to the left of her at that point, kind of kneeling down?
To the left in this photo, yes.
Okay. And are you near, where's the body of Mr. Cole Brown Simpson in this particular photograph, so we'll know?
That would be in front of us towards this direction.
All right, in front of us to the east, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, I notice now a vehicle is coming up, it says LA County Coroner on it. You recall that a vehicle arriving that morning?
Yes.
And is that the vehicle driven by Ms. Ratcliffe's assistant, Mr. Jacopo?
Yes.
And he arrived at about what time that morning, if you recall?
I believe it was shortly after her, shortly after Ratcliffe, perhaps 10, 15 minutes.
And the man there in the blue with coroner written on the back of his jumpsuit, that's Mr. Jacopo?
Yes.
All right, and you saw him arrive sometime about 9:20, 9:25, is that correct?
I believe so.
All right. Now, when he arrives at the scene, he stops apparently to talk to some particular officer. And I see to the right, that's Lieutenant Rogers, is that correct?
Yes.
You know the officer he's talking to at that point?
I believe it might be Officer Cummings.
Is he logging in at that point, sir?
Yes.
All right, we may proceed. That's also Detective Phillips again?
Yes.
Is that Ms. Reckloff again?
Yes.
That's the front of the Bundy residence again?
Yes.
Is that a long view of the residence there at both, I guess, 873 and 875?
Yes, looking northwest direction.
All right, now, at this point, there are two men there. We'll stop it. Is that you talking with Lieutenant Rogers?
Yes.
Okay. If you know, the body's been moved sequentially at this point?
I don't believe so.
All right, continue on. Again, that's a view taken from the street, somewhere across the street, is that correct?
Yes, appears to be.
All right. Is that the sergeant you described for us earlier?
Yes.
The LAPD Sergeant Palmer?
Yes.
In the background is the body of Mr. Cole Brown Simpson?
Yes.
Now, there's somebody who just stepped down. Apparently, you're stepping over something. Is that over Mr. Cole Brown Simpson's body?
Yes, it is.
Now, do you notice something? Do you have something on your hands now?
Yes, I'm wearing plastic rubberized gloves.
All right, where'd you get those gloves from, if you know?
I carry them with me.
All right, and just refresh your recollection that you were wearing some gloves at some point that day?
Yes,
All right, you're stepping over where the body's still in place there, is that correct?
that's correct.
Coroner's not moved the body yet.
That's correct.
All right, and all right, we'll move it on. Now, stop it there. I noticed that up on that landing, the two coroner's representatives were standing there, is that correct?
Yes,
Do you see the shoes of Miss Radcliffe?
yes,
And to her left or east of her, the gentleman, Mr. Jacopo, apparently has his left foot resting on the railing there. Is that correct? You see that?
looks to be the foot is on the wall. I don't know if it's on the railing.
Let's show it on. Maybe we can see it clearer. Left foot is resting on something, right?
Yes, appears to be.
All right. See there? No,
Yes,
it's not there.
yes, I do.
Where's his foot resting on?
It went from the wall to the railing.
All right. So, all right. And you're bending down. Are you taking some kind of measurements at that point?
Yes,
And they're standing there at that point above you. Is that correct?
yes,
All right. And you're about to step into the area where Mr. Gomez's body was found.
that's correct.
Now, you had no coverings on your shoes at that point, did you?
That's correct.
All right, again, that's you in the foreground. Now,
Yes.
let's stop it there. There's a gentleman we've been talking about with a kind of a white jacket on with white hair. Who is that individual?
It's Mr. Rokar, the photographer.
And he's a gentleman who took a lot of these photographs here.
Yes.
He's the man we have to ask the questions about why we have duplicate numbers. Same guy?
No, I believe there were 3 different photographers employed on those 2 different dates, and the criminalist. So if I wanted an answer, I'd probably talk to all 4.
All four? I'd have to talk to all four?
The criminalist and the 3 photographers.
Okay. All right, but that's Rokar, right?
That's Mr. Rokar in the
Okay,
center,
fine.
yes.
Maybe continue. Who's he talking to? Who's that to his left?
I'll have to wait till he stands up again. I believe it looked like Phillips.
All right. Now, it's apparently a long view from across the street. Do you see your back there?
Yes.
Rokar is somewhere near you? Okay, stop it there. We see inside the yellow tape there, that's Lieutenant Rogers, is that correct?
I can't tell whether or not he's inside the tape. I can't see because of the band at the bottom.
Okay, well, Rogers is somewhere in the foreground, is that correct?
Yes.
And who's that man with the kind of sandy hair, if you know?
That's Assistant Lab Director Steve Johnson.
Steve Johnson, who's he employed? Lab director for whom?
The LAPD Scientific Investigation Division.
All right, when did he come to the scene?
I believe it was probably shortly before for this video.
Okay, have you seen his name on the log before?
I believe it is on log, yes.
Can you tell us, refresh your recollection as to what time he may have arrived?
No,
All right, you don't know?
I don't recall. I didn't make a point of checking. I suppose I could look at the log.
You do recall he was out there that day, is that right?
Yes.
All right, we'll continue on, sir. And stop it there, who's that gentleman there?
Which gentleman?
The one with you can't see, the one to the left of Mrs. Jacopo who's in the blue jumpsuit. Can you back it up for a minute, Mr. Terry? Do you recall who that was at that point?
The one below the
No.
man with the...
Can you look up? No, I'll show you. The one right there, one right behind Jacopo from the coroner's office, that gentleman. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure it'll help you from this angle. Can you tell us who that is? Mr. Rogers, Steve Johnson, who that is?
No.
All right, we may resume your seat. Thank you. Mr. Harris, please continue. At this point, is this the plastic sheet that you were talking to us about,
Yes.
which Ms. Nicole Brown Simpson was placed on her back as much as possible in a supine position? Is that correct?
Well, she was placed on the plastic. She was in full rigor mortis, so that couldn't be a complete supine position.
I said as much as possible in a supine position, sir, as opposed to being lying
Well,
face
she was
down.
placed on it. I don't know what you mean by as much as possible.
Well, be due to the rigor that you've described for us. All right, stop there. Now, you recognize the people in this photograph, do you not?
Yes, there's myself, and
The man in the dark suit is whom?
I believe it's Phillips,
All right, and to his left is whom?
and that's Rokar.
And in the foreground here, do you know who this is?
I really can't tell.
Can't tell?
No.
And to the right there, bending over, you know who that is? Isn't that Miss?
I can't see, but it possibly is Ratcliffe.
Miss Ratcliffe? All right, continue, please, Mr. Harris. Now, can you see now who that gentleman is in the foreground?
No.
Okay, continue on, please. Still can't tell?
No.
All right, we'll continue. This is the removal of Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's body. Her body was moved first.
Yes.
All right. Now, again, is that you in and around the scene where the body was?
Yes.
And at that point, we see the two coroner's assistants, is that correct?
Yes.
And in the foreground there, is that criminalist trainee Mazzola, M-A-Z-Z-O-L-A?
Appears to be, yes.
All right, continue on, please. Are you stepping, now who is that coming through there now? With no,
Smith.
who is that?
Mr. Fung.
And is he one of the criminalists?
Yes.
Stop it, you see he has nothing on his hands?
Yes.
And he's carrying, you back that up a minute, Mr. Harris? Stop it there. He's carrying a bag or something in his hand?
Yes.
You see that? So that we're clear who's here in this particular photograph, the female coroner's represented, and her name?
Her name?
Yes.
Ratcliffe.
Radcliffe, and we have Fung, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, in the foreground we have Jacopo.
Yes.
Okay, and further out, because the perspective is Mazzola, is that right?
Yes. Appears to be.
Okay, to her right is Rokar, the photographer.
Yes.
All right, and then because of perspective, can you tell who that is with that dark suit there, behind Rokar?
At the lower right-hand corner?
Yeah, yeah, right-hand corner there, the dark blue suit. Left arm.
I believe it might be Officer Carson Pierce.
Carson Pierce?
Yes.
Perhaps we'll see another photograph. Continue, Mr. Harris, please, sir. Now, can you see that person with the sandy hair? That's Steve Johnson, though?
Yes.
Steve Johnson?
Yes.
Who's that man there? In the
That's
foreground?
Detective Tippin.
Mr. Tippin, he's one of the ones who took the statements you told us about earlier, T-I-P-P-I-N?
He's one of the detectives who went to the Goldman residence.
All right. Tippin and Carr?
Yes.
All right, sir. Is this Mr. Goldman's body this time, is that correct, sir?
Yes,
He's already been moved out from the small area?
that's correct.
All right, now stop it right there, Mr. Harris. This man over the left who was kind of rubbing his brow a moment ago, is that the criminalist, Mr. Fung?
Yes, he's on the left.
You notice he still doesn't have any gloves on? You notice that?
He doesn't appear to.
All right. And again, you previously described the individual. Is that you pointing?
Yes.
All right. Continue, Mr. Harris, please. Did you ever use more than one pair of gloves that day, if you recall?
I may have. I had gloves on for a while, had them off for a while, had them on. I may have. If I'd taken those off, I couldn't have put them back on, so I'd have put a different pair on.
You have that written down anywhere? Is that in your notes?
I took my gloves off?
Yes, but you changed gloves at the scene.
No.
I think that's it.
It's 4:30, Your Honor.
Indeed it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon. Please remember my admonition to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't discuss it amongst yourselves or perform any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you regarding the case. And we will be in session on matters regarding the case, but we will not require your presence on Friday. So we'll see you back here on Monday, 9 o'clock. All right? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a nice weekend.